We live in interesting times. It's amazing. You know, it's not like, you say, hey, Scott, come on the show. And we go, well, there's not really much to talk about. The world's a sort of a boring place. I mean, it's amazing how rapidly the world is changing right now. And it's only going to become even more interesting when these wars stop, and these wars will stop eventually. But that's when the really interesting stuff comes. That's where the complexity of geopolitics and economics comes in. So, we live in interesting times, and so I'm thankful to have the opportunity to come on and have conversations like this.
Yeah, same here. I mean, I know you've made several trips to Russia. I'm going on trip number 3 to China next month, and when these wars stop, I feel like it's these two powers that are emerging in this multipolar world, with all of the other nations that are either partially or fully on board. That process is just going to accelerate incredibly, because in my estimation, a lot of these wars are kind of attempts to arrest this broader process. And while it's failing, in some ways, it's accelerated it. At the same time,
look at the Ukraine. Look at the Ukraine conflict.
Yeah.
I mean, again, last thing, when I tell people I'm a simple Marine, I'm a simple Marine. It's about as simple as it gets. In college, I played football and drank beer. That was my thing. I've had a very interesting life, and I've had some pretty cool experiences and all that. But I'm no genius. But I will tell you that BRICS. If you're not focused on BRICS right now, you're not focused on the right thing. Before the Ukraine conflict, BRICS was just sort of this 5-nation forum that wasn't getting any traction anywhere. The G7 was always going to outflank BRICS, and the G20 was always going to overwhelm BRICS. Because of this war, because of America and European overreach, BRICS has become relevant, and it's expanding. I'm going to be going to Kazan in October to the BRICS summit, and it's going to be. It's just going to.
I'm jealous. I'm jealous.
Blow the socks, because this is where the change is taking place, right there. And this multilateralism. We always talked about a multipolar world theoretically. It's happening right now. But in America, again, I would imagine, I'm not picking on your audience, but many audiences would say, okay, I think I got the idea of BRICS. I've heard this before. Kazan, where's that? How do you point that out on a map? Excuse me. But, it's happening in Kazan. It's going to bring together, Kazan's a city in Russia, by the way, but it's an Islamic city. It's become a center of East and West mingling. It's a very big deal. And this BRICS summit is a huge deal. The war may be over by then, but then the real geopolitical struggle is beginning. And the first major battlefield of that will be in Kazan, where BRICS is charting this brave new world of multipolarity versus the American-controlled singularity that the G7 represents. That's going to be the struggle of the future: G7 versus BRICS, and it's going to be fascinating. I'm really excited about the potential of being there and seeing it first.
You want to press fast forward on these next 6 or so months?
Well, I mean, there's other things happening between now and then that I don't want to bypass. I'll be going to the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum in June, and that will be, again, just mind blowing. And then hopefully I'm getting an invitation to the Moscow Security Conference in October, which is, again, the reason why I'm emphasizing all this is that if you're not thinking about Russia right now, you're not thinking about the right. You need to think about China too. But right now, Russia's on the forefront of this. This conflict with the West, and when the war ends, we have to take into account, if we're not understanding the Russian economy, St. Petersburg International Economic Forum, if we're not understanding the Russian military, the Moscow Security Conference, and if we're not understanding how Russia is working with the multipolar world to create this global transition, you're doing the wrong thing. You're literally doing the wrong thing. And the thing is, most Americans are going to miss this because we're worried about some stupid race between Donald Trump and Joe Biden. Now, it's a big deal. But I'm just saying that we're so focused on the drama that's there that we're missing the fact that come November, one of these two is probably going to end up being the president of the United States. But the world doesn't care anymore because we've become rapidly irrelevant, and the world's moving on. And there's going to be three big things happening this summer while we're worried about, is Donald Trump going to get indicted, go on trial, be this, is Joe Biden's brain going to drop out of his body? While we're worried about that, the world is moving. And you're the expert on China. China ain't just sitting here waiting. Let's just wait and see what happens to America. China's doing stuff too. China's building. It has its own Belts and Roads initiative. If you're not following that, you're not following anything. The world is moving rapidly away from the norms that we've all long accepted as being what reality is. And we're going to wake up on November on election day going, hey, our candidate won, or oh my God, my candidate lost. And then we're going to say, well, now it's time to move on to the world. And the world's going to be there ahead of us, galloping away. And we're going to be sitting back here, picking our noses because we're focused on the wrong things.
Well, I think that's what I think a commonality between me and you, Scott, is that we are kind of sick and tired of the stagnation. We talked. You mentioned the elections, and it's like, oh well, it's important, and one or the other candidate will be chosen, but this description of the world will be over there, the multipolar world is moving away, also gets me thinking about stagnation. Yeah, the United States is going to be in the same place because neither Biden nor Trump or really the political class, they're not moving toward a kind of change that excites people who want to see people live better lives, who want to prevent nuclear war, who want to prevent a global military confrontation in general. These are the type of things that China and Russia together, in many ways, the synergy between them is just at such a high level now that that is what interests me. I know that's what interests you, and the difference. And when I go to China, everyone always says, well, they want to talk about how China isn't democracy this, China isn't democracy that, but you can't recognize.
Who cares?
But it's like if you go to China from one year to the next, you don't recognize a lot of things because massive changes are happening. And that's in order for massive changes to happen, generally people have to be involved, they have to be at least aware, or they have to be really involved in that process, because you don't build all of that infrastructure, you don't improve people's lives. Similar to Russia, you don't come out of a hole like the fall of the Soviet Union without massive changes that involves people, which in many ways could be defined as a kind of democratic process. People's lives need to get better, people need to be involved in their lives getting better, and that's what's so interesting. But the United States, you can live in New York City or live in wherever for many, many years, and things may change, but certainly you will talk about it as if you don't really have control over that change. Well, unless you're a developer, unless you're a local politician, unless you are a federal politician, state politician. But if you're not any of those things, you talk about it as if it's outside of you. When I go to China, I'm sure you've had this experience in Russia, people talk about it like they're the ones who are part of that process. And I think that's what is very exciting about this moment.
The Russian people own Russia today. And what I mean by that isn't, financial ownership. Of course it is. But what I mean by that is that how many Americans say I own America? What I mean by that is America, I'm part of the process that's making America what it is today. Many Americans feel powerless because they feel like the system is beyond them. Politics is beyond them. Their vote doesn't matter. This doesn't matter. How is that a democracy? In Russia, while they don't have, the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, and they don't have this insanity that we have called a free election, which isn't a free election. I mean, it's what the parties say it is, ladies and gentlemen. It ain't what we say it is. But in Russia, Yeah, they're having an election right now, and we know that Putin's going to win, and it was never in doubt. But that's not what defines Russian democracy. What defines Russian democracy is the fact that the people have bought into the concept of Russia, and they support the concept of Russia, and they're collectively working to make Russia succeed. That's sort of. I always laugh. I'll just leave you with this. I want to. But when I was a weapons inspector in Iraq, the one thing I always heard is Saddam Hussein is a brutal dictator. There is no democracy in Iraq. The parliament is a rubber stamp institution, perhaps. But do you know anything about Arab tribalism? Do you understand that Saddam Hussein didn't have the ability to just say things, that he actually had, especially within his own family, within his own tribal group, he had to go to the tribe and sort of clear this stuff, and that the tribes have to listen to the people, that they're tribal councils, and people come together, and there's no dictator saying this, that. They all sit there and they listen, and they're respectful to each other, and they, when somebody throws an objection, honor requires that be listened to, and that you have to now adhere to what they're concerned about, and then you caution Saddam not to do something because the tribe's unhappy, and that's a hell of a lot more democratic than whatever we got going on right here. I mean, if I can go to my tribal council and make a statement about this, that, and the other thing, and then they can bring it up and it gets to Saddam, and Saddam is compelled to do something. Imagine if I could go right now to my local town council and end up doing something that comes to the attention of the President of the United States, so that the President of the United States had to change the policy because out of respect for me and respect for the process, respect for the people. That's sort of democracy, respect for the people. We don't have that here in America. It's ridiculous how the politicians use us. They want our vote, but they don't respect us. So I'm tired of people throwing that term democracy around. Physician, heal thyself. America, fix it before you start talking about importing it. Now that's it. I just needed to say that.
Well, I'll just close to say, what you described of Iraq reminds me of a lot of things I learned about Libya right before its destruction in terms of its own system, because Libya had a very similar kind of makeup and required really a pretty complicated system of, you could call it direct democracy. You had to have that kind of level of involvement for anything to really work, given the makeup of Libya itself. And China has a very similar process too. It has a process of people are, from the very smallest level at the village, you can become a deputy of that village, and then how you consult and address problems at a very small level goes up to the next level in order for that to, if there, resources, whatever it is that's needed and required at the municipal, up to the provincial level, and all the way up to the NPC, the maybe the equivalent of a Congress. That's kind of what it takes to manage and politically govern 1.4 billion people. Yeah, and that's why,
Well,
when
that's
you
the other
study,
thing Americans don't understand is it's 1.4 billion people.
and there's 50 plus ethnic groups. Russia, I know it's smaller, but also has a very multifaceted, diverse population. Like, if you govern it singularly, like the dictator trope,
It wouldn't work.
it would fall in a second. It would fall. That's why I always say, if Gaddafi, if Putin, if Xi Jinping, if all these people were dictators like they were called, they would have been overthrown by popular means, by means of their own destruction. Meanwhile, it's taken. I guess it's succeeded in Libya and Iraq, but it not Russia and China, but it's taken massive amounts of foreign intervention in order to even make the case, to make this case that these countries are all pariahs and that we should all basically despise them for the purposes of war. Thank you for tuning in to my latest video. I appreciate all of your support. This channel, however, needs your help. I am seeking to make this channel more sustainable in the long term and upgrade necessary equipment to ensure that this work continues onward and makes progress to give you all of the geopolitical analysis
that you all deserve. For that reason, I'm asking you to become a member of my Patreon community at patreon.com/DannyHaiphong. You can find that link in the video description or in the pinned comment below. For whatever amount you choose to give, just know you are supporting independent media that you can't find anywhere else. Thank you so much, and I look forward to the next video.